Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. It's going to be our first series, if you will, of workshops for the summer. We're going to cover Git and GitHub tonight. Everyone hear me all right? Yes. All right. Lots of yeses. All right. Today, we're going to start off with a little bit of explanation of exactly what Git does, how it works. And if you don't already know, Git and GitHub are two different things. So you probably will learn a little bit here. We're going to delve a little bit into what exactly Git is, what exactly GitHub is, and then we're going to do a lot of hands-on in GitHub on items you probably haven't really worked with before. Sort of putting together issues for a repository, your project board for a repository, forking, doing pull requests, understanding what commits are, understanding what pulls and pushes are, all that kind of good stuff. So without further ado, we start sharing this cool PowerPoint that I hope I can find on here. Where is it? There it is. All right, everyone see the PowerPoint? Get my chat back up. Okay. All right. Whoops. All right. So what's GitHub? GitHub is basically a version control website that is, you can think of it as a cloud type operation, because really it is. So Git, what we'll talk about here in a second, is just a local piece that is going to be stuck kind of on either your machine or on a local server most times. GitHub is where you're going to be able to go anywhere in the world, work with any other open source like-minded people or other people in your office, and be able to collaborate on the same projects, whether it's on the same actual sheet of code that you're doing or in the same overall project. So GitHub is a type of version control. So what this allows you to be able to do is, first, you get to see and track what changes you have made, as long as you are continually committing your information to your Git repository. Now, everything totally fails if you neglect to commit. If you just keep going and going, and you commit that first day, and then 6 or 7 days later, you say, oh man, I haven't committed this any of the stuff that I've done. Let me commit it all. And then you find out you broke something. Well, you can't kind of jump back in time from there, except back to the first day. So one of the things that you're going to have to remember to do when you're using version control system, especially when you're getting into some of these some pieces that might be tricky, you're going to want to continually commit your changes. All right. So when you commit a change to a repository, there's a couple things that happen. Git itself, it tracks what changes are made in a big SHA-1 hash. So it understands that, hey, at this certain point in time, I made this commit, me, the user, and that commit now is ingrained into the Git repository. So it'll say who made those changes, what majors were changed, and then hopefully when I did my commit and I did any changes to that commit from previously, I explained what the changes were that were in there. So Git itself is a version control system, but that version control system sits on your machine. So it is open source. It was built back in the day, in 2005 by the Linux team, and it was part of the Linux kernel originally. Get you guys in. And since it is kind of, it spread itself out. Oops, sorry. I'm going to let people in and trying to keep on my slides. It's a little difficult. So since then, it is kind of spread out not only throughout the Linux community, but also into Mac OS and also into Windows. So now anywhere you go on any system you want to be, even now on Chromebook, because it is, you know, GitHub is online, you can have that version control system somewhere. Now, Git is actually a piece of software that you need to download onto your own computer if you're going to have a local repository, right? And the link will come up here in a little bit. But when we start talking about some of the modern IDEs that are out there that you might be using, like Eclipse or Android Studio or Xcode or NetBeans, most all of these pieces integrate with Git, but Git needs to be installed on your computer for it to integrate with it. They also will integrate with GitHub as well. All right, so the big difference is Git is local software on your computer. GitHub is web-based platform, and it's going to be on the web. Some larger companies are going to have Git repositories on servers so that everyone within that company can utilize the same repositories, but they're not going to be open to the general public like GitHub is. GitHub and Gitbucket and all the other Git hosting services, if you will, they're all meant for the open source community. So the open source community being those that believe that everything should be free, and if I build something, just give me credit for it. I don't necessarily need money for it, right? Altruistic, Mozilla, all those guys. I don't know how many of you guys feel about that, but all right. So GitHub. So GitHub, they let's see, that came up into being about 2012. And I think last year it got big enough that Microsoft swallowed it up and is now part of Microsoft's family of products. What GitHub tried to do was kind of make Git more user-friendly, right? So some of you might have been exposed to Git as something to do with command line prompts. Yes? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding heads. So that was kind of, you know, back in the caveman days of Git usage. GitHub kind of made it, you know, more user-friendly. And as kind of GitHub evolved, the more people started jumping on GitHub, Gitbucket, and all the rest of them, all of the IDE manufacturers started to kind of say, hey, there's something to this. All these people are wanting to get, you know, to use Git through our IDE instead of having to go through the terminal now. Maybe we should start integrating all this stuff in. So all of these companies have started to integrate your ability to get into GitHub and into Git right through the IDEs. All right, so if you do not already have Git installed, you can easily install it from this link here. I would suggest, you know, just going in and checking it out, checking out what your version is, because when I did, I noticed I was like 15 versions behind, because I don't necessarily think of Git a lot when I'm using it. It's just there, but there are a lot of new things that have been included in the newer versions of Git, and it's, you know, right there on on the git-smc.com webpage. That the manual is right there and everything else. You can either install it right through terminal, or you can install it through the .exe, or you can install it through DMG for Linux and Mac OS. Does everyone have a GitHub account? If you do not have a GitHub account, please make one now, because you will be using it during this exercise. Couple tips: please make it your username kind of professional. You don't want to be that guy, because if you haven't already been thinking about applying for jobs or anything, a lot of the employers are going to be asking for your GitHub repository, so try to keep everything professional on there. All right. So again, these Git and GitHub are two separate, totally different things. They work independently together, but they can also work together. All right. Most developers are going to use them as kind of a tag team of fury to ensure that they keep control of what version of the software that they're currently building. All right. As I already mentioned, either you can certainly go back if you're comfortable using the terminal commands. By all means, go ahead and do that. But I got a slide up here that has a video for every single IDE you can think of. And there's only like 9 of them on there, but YouTube, hey, you can find everything on YouTube. So you can just Google on YouTube how GitHub interacts with your favorite IDE. All right, so how Git works. So we're going to get into kind of a little bit of the backbone of Git, so you kind of understand what it is. It's kind of made up of 3 different things, really 4, but the 3 main things are blobs, and they're just blobs of information, trees, and commits. And the 4th one down here in the bottom that I stuck on there just is a tag. So a blob is essentially just the file of what Git has for a leveling of your repository at that particular moment in time from your last commit. Okay, it takes all of that information that you have, and it is pretty much set onto a what they call a branch of the tree, and that main branch is where your blob resides, and that blob contains everything that is known about your code. Okay, so that, I think it's 128 bits of hash. All of your code's there. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but it's all there, and it's saved in that blob, right? So the other part of Git are the trees, and these trees are basically directories of where your project is at a certain point in time, right? So you might have heard the term branches and merging before. So as in a tree, I think most of us have seen kind of a binary tree. Everyone know what a binary tree looks like? I know Dr. Yang will, explain them to us in quite some length if we like. But basically we have, 1 node and 2 children. So what happens is, if we have a straight line tree where we're just committing the same information over and over again, we'll just have 1 branch of our tree. Now, what usually will happen is, if, for example, myself and Jesse are working on the same project, all right? So I'm working on one part and I have Jesse working on another part, okay? What I'm gonna have Jesse do is, Jesse's gonna branch off of our main trunk. I'm gonna branch off, excuse me. I'm going to branch off of the main chunk, off the main trunk, and we're going to have two branches that are running parallel to each other. All right. That's going to do a couple things for us. Number one, it's not going to disturb the original piece of the original project that we have. So for example, we have everything working. We have what we call an MVP, a minimal viable product that we just put onto the Android store, right? But now we want to add in some goodies. So to do that, we're going to not break our working copy. So we're going to branch off to a new line of our tree, a new branch, and we're going to start working and commit new files on this new line until we are confident that this new branch is now viable and sustainable and will not break when we deploy it off to replace our current version on the Android store. So once we're confident that that happens, we're going to merge our branch back into our main tree, and it will stay back online to where our original project was. I, on the other hand, am working on a slightly different part of what Jesse was working on, and it took me longer. So now my merge comes in maybe 2 or 3 steps after Jesse's merge, but my merge comes in and it puts all that stuff that I worked on into the main branch and puts it all together. And now we have a better product and we haven't broken it in the process. Because I don't know how many times that I've worked on something, so, oh yeah, this is going to be great. I get it, try to do some crazy thing in, some triple loop or something. And next thing I know, boom, nothing works again. And I forgot to commit anything, and I broke it, and now I have to redo everything that I did already. So if you can remember to commit your stuff while you're doing your homework, you might be better off, right? And that takes us to our third part, is the commits. So every time that you're working on your project and you select commit on that in that IDE or in the terminal, it's going to take a snapshot of exactly where that project, what that project looks like at that given point in time. All right. The commits will continue on the tree. The trees are in the blob, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, but that commit, that is like, the main piece. So just remember, if you're working, always commit. Because if you don't commit, Git and GitHub is not going to remember where you were. Right? But if you regularly commit, it's kind of like saving. You remember back in the old days, I don't know, I'm kind of old, but when you're working on Microsoft Word or something, you're typing something out and your machine crashed, you had this, 2 pages of essay done and the blue screen of death came up and everything's gone. Just think of that commit as that save button. And when we get over to the hands-on, I'll show you exactly how you can go back in time and recreate exactly what you already had done and put all the pieces back together so that your project will still work. And when you go to turn it in at the end of the semester or the end of the week or whenever it is, you have something that actually works, all right? So the last piece that's on there, it's kind of stuck on the bottom of the slide, is the tag. The tag is just basically for you, the user, and for the user of the repository in the future, if you will. You are just annotating what you're doing with a little bit more information than what's on just the commit itself, right? So when you do a commit in both terminal and Git and in GitHub, you usually are going to have to title that, and you're also usually going to have a description that goes along with that, right? So that all that information that you put in, all that explanation of why you did what you did to change what you did, will be captured in that commit, in that snapshot. So when you go 2 or 3 up, 2 or 3 commits up, and you're like, I don't understand why this don't work anymore, you can always go back to and see, hey, I changed that. Well, maybe that change that I did back here had something to do with why it doesn't work now. All right. So yeah. So when you talk about Git and its internals, one of the things you'll usually hear is the head of the Git, and that's kind of like the master branch, and that's kind of where when you pick up on your Git, that's usually where um, the last starting point of the repository is, right? So it maintains a set of references or refs that go back, and those just correspond back with the commits, all right? So if you kind of, you know, with the head point, the head reference point and the branch reference points and stuff, you can kind of untangle yourself sometimes, because I'm not going to say that you're going to have a lot of complex things here in most of your classes or anything, but you're probably not going to have a lot of complex things going on in most of your classes. But when it comes time to when you're having to work with, you know, 20 or 30 other developers on the same project in the same repository, you're probably going to have tons of crazy commits and branches, and stuff's going to go here, there, and everywhere else. And some poor sap's going to have to go through and figure out exactly where everything's supposed to go at some point. The head point and these references within the branches that you own are supposed to kind of help understand where you as the developer are, and then kind of transfer that off into the larger repository. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You'll see some, you know, if you kind of, I don't think it's been as bad as it was, but you can kind of Google some horror stories of people trying to merge stuff back together on some old repositories, and they just weren't able to do it, and it just became like nightmares. All right. So this is kind of how Git works, right? So if you think of the red lollipop there, the working directory, as what you're seeing on your screen, okay, in your IDE. All right. You're going, you're typing away, you're doing all your stuff, and it's doing its automatic saves and stuff like that. All right. I am a big Xcode user, so I like to work in iOS. And one of the things that it does, and it does this in most IDEs, it either assigns a letter or it changes your colors in the file tree for all your files in your project. When you have done a save, changed a particular file or something like that, when you have Git operating in that IDE. So your IDE is kind of tracking for you all of the changes that have been made between your commits. All right. Now, if you're strictly working in terminal, you're going to have to do this all manually. You're going to have to stage all of your stuff through terminal yourself. All right. But again, when we get to the staging area, you're going to need to remember to commit your information. All right. Your IDE is going to remember that these files were changed, but it's much like, you know, that Word document that we're talking about before, right? You can go back and you can look at the last saved part of that document, right? But you can't go back usually 5 or 6 versions back. I mean, technically you kind of can, but not in any easily remedied situation. But with the commit, you're able to do that, because you're going to have that tag of exactly where you were at that given point in time, and that repository is going to track that with its specific hash mark. All right. So when I commit, that's going to be sent up to the Git directory. All right. So that Git directory, and in this case, this is going to be staying on our local machine because this is just Git, and then it's going to be stuck right there. All right. Typically what happens now is that in order for you to continue on, that IDE is going to request that you either do a pull, do a checkout of that current commit, or they're going to have you sync up the information. All right. So again, this these are things that you have to do in terminal manually, but all your IDEs are going to be able to do this all automatically for you now. And so what's going to happen is once you did that commit, what's now in that directory is going to go back and now populate your working directory, and you'll start doing more information. You'll stage that again, you'll commit, and it'll be a continual cycle. So as long as you stay on that commit track, you'll keep that perfect cycle of building and retaining all that information in. All right. So this is kind of a look at what the tree looks like. So you can see the different parts. We have some tags in there. The commits are all on that one level. We have the trees, which are different branches, and the blobs attached to different trees. But you have to understand that Git is keeping track of all this stuff in that directed acyclic graph, and making sure that everything that you're doing is keeping track of perfectly. Okay, there's a lot of working stuff in the background there that if you want to think about it, it's just going back. It's looking at a particular point in time, and it's using a pointer to point at that point in time and pull it back to you so you can look exactly what you're working on and should be working on going forward. All right, so main things, the repository. You'll see a lot of people call this a project, the same thing. But this is where all your meat and potatoes are. This is where everything's saved. This is where everything gets organized. And when we start talking about GitHub itself, this is where all the meat and potatoes are shown to all of the people who are following you as a developer, and all those people that are looking at checking your work to see if they want to use it in their own work. All right. So just in case, here's a couple Git terminal commands. Some of these we're going to use a little bit more in depth when we start talking about GitHub itself. But first thing, git init. All we're doing is initiating that repository, that directory. We're going to clone some stuff when we get our hands on here. We're going to add to, but in this case, we're going to commit, and we're going to push information. We're going to pull information. We're going to fork information. We're going to do a lot of crazy stuff that you've probably never thought of before, and hopefully you'll learn some stuff. All right, so let's move over here to the workshop. I'm going to move over to... All right. So the first thing I want you guys to do here, all right, is we're going to watch this repository. All right, so the only thing that we need to do to watch this repository is I need you, let me annotation here. You just come on up here and click on watch this repository. And I should when I'll refresh. And I get a couple more, okay. All right. So what this does, now I can pull this down, and you can either be watching it, you can see when only releases are being done, or you can ignore it totally. Right now, I just want you to watch so you can see when we're doing all these changes, how GitHub responds to all the changes that are happening in this repository, okay? Go ahead and clear. You can go ahead and click star and follow this. So all this is doing is kind of bookmarking this repository for you to come back to later, all right? This isn't giving it a rating system or anything of that nature, although a lot of people kind of track it that way, but it's not really what it's there for. It's just there for you to be able to come in and to, on your home page here in GitHub, be able to find this repository once again after you've already come through it. Okay. Now this is an important part. All right. So please, everyone here, we're going to fork this information, fork this repository. All right. And it's going to ask you to fork it to, if you have an organization you're attached to or whatever, fork it somewhere to your profiles would probably work best. All right. And then we're going to go to your profile and we're going to look at your new forked repository in your profile. All right. So I'm going to move some of this stuff over so I can get over here. So go into my profile. I have this forked over into this organization here. And this is my local copy of this repository, right? So everything that I do in this repository stays in this repository, right? It is my, I now own this. Or, well, I own this with a couple other guys because they're in this organization with me. But for all intents and purposes, this is my copy, right? And you will see kind of that I have an older README file on here that I put together like originally, and it's not as robust as what you might have on your own version, right? What I want you to do in here is I want you to come right here, click on this Create New File button. I want you to name your file, your first name, and give it a actual ending. So I'm just going to do HTML. Okay. I'm going to do a little information. Just type my file in here. I'm going to put in my file upload into my commit file. And I'm going to commit a new file. So what I have just done here now is I have now created a new file outside of the original repository. So let's say I did something really cool or I did something that was needed in this particular project. So how do I get this to go back into the main project? So what I need to do to do that is I need to do a pull request. All right, so that pull request is right here. Is right here. All right, so once you've added a new file in, what I want you to do is we're going to click on this new pull request. All right, and it's going to show here's the information that I changed. This is all the change that I have. Doesn't really matter how much change I have. All I want you to understand is that you're going to have some change. You're going to create a pull request, right? Give me a little information. It says, all right, I created this file, my file to upload, and it fixes issue number 1, for example. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to click on create pull request. All right. So now what just happened here, and you might not have seen it because I own this, but did anyone see what happened to my page specifically when I did the pull request? I went back to the main repository of where everything was at. So this is where all that information was. So I can go back here and now see I have 4 pull requests that are going on here. So I have one from Jesse, one from William, I have one from from Samantha, and I have one for myself. So as I go through, I can come in, and I can go in and I can read, hey, why should I accept this in? So, all right, well, he says that it fixed this particular issue here. So I'm going to accept, and then I'm going to confirm the merge. And as I did that, that pull request was closed. I'm going to go through, and let me jump through and do all this. Now, if you guys go in and you refresh the code tab up here, what you should see is a bunch of new files that are now part of this program. So you have all these things up in here now. Right? We've done our pull requests. Right, so let's take a look now. We're going to start with our first tab on here. We're going to go to our code tab if you're not already here. All right. On here, we have, and we'll get to this part right here, our description. We'll get to this in a minute. But we're going to start here with this, this link right here that has the commits. All right, so I'm going to click into this commits window here. And what you're going to find is that there have been, 66 commits on this particular project since it was incepted, right? So going back all the way to when I built it on the 2nd of the month. On here, it's going to give me an actual verification of a signed key number ID that was signed by a GitHub authority saying that, yes, this was actually a valid change to our repository, right? If I want to copy my, my hash, I can do that. If I need it to go somewhere else, all that's going to do is just copy the hash. But I can also click in here, and that's going to show me what changed when we did this last commit, all right? So I have my two commits that were put together from the two parents, and then it created this new hash itself, and then it breaks down into the top 7 or 8 or top 7 numbers there to depict on your screen. So let's say I didn't like anything that that these guys put in here. So I can actually go back here and say, let's go back to, we only want to go back to where Jesse was. So let's go back. We can go back, and this is the repository when we did our last commit, when we had Jesse, when we committed Jesse's pull request, okay? So as you can see here, all those new files are totally gone. If this was our last jumping off point where our program last worked, our project last worked, this is probably where we want to go back to ensure that we start again from here, and then we can work through and try to not make the same mistakes we made in breaking our program in the first spot. in the same spot that we did before. Or we can decide, all right, we can jump through to each of these commits and see if these work without going back and erasing them, okay? Now, I can go back in time here. So let's go back to Jesse's. All right. And we're going to come down, actually, do it easy. We'll just say we're going to change our README file. I'm just going to type in change. I'm going to commit the changes. And when I go back to the code here, I go back to the commits. I can actually go back. I should have. Oh, it's because I didn't check it out correctly. Sorry. I didn't check it out correctly, but I could have checked it out and then had a new line stuck right here above. Oops, draw text right here, right above Jesse in this area here. And I could have started again with all this stuff gone. But I don't really want to do that today, so. All right. So one of the key things that you probably have never heard of or interacted with on GitHub is GitHub issues. Anyone ever done anything with issues in GitHub?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
one yes.
One yes. Yeah, use it all the time for CodePath. That's how we update
yes.
the courses. Yeah. Like a lot of people, they use GitHub for their website. That's how they keep track of changes on their web pages, is they'll have it automatically pull and build from GitHub. It's kind of a later on topic though.
Yeah, that'll be next week, Clinton.
Yeah.
But, so with this one, so with this, so I have been kind of trying to go along and learn Angular JS. If you're familiar with any web-based JavaScript libraries that are going on lately, Angular, Vue, React. A lot of people are building their own components and stuff like that. So what happens is they'll build a component for, say, Angular 7, but it doesn't work right with Angular 9. So what people will do is they'll go back to that guy's repository where his program, that component is currently residing, and open basically a ticket. That's basically what it is opening a ticket for them to resolve the problem that's going on with their particular program at that point in time. All right, so what we have here, I have a couple already done here, but there's a couple that are already closed. I have one that's open. So this one is simply, I just said, hey, we need to create a contact page for this website, all right? But what you guys can do is you can come over in here and get my draw up here. You come over right here, click on new issue, go in, click a new issue, and tell me something I need to fix on my web page. It can be totally hypothetical because this is only a hypothetical page so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, whenever I'm writing issues, even if it's for myself, like a description of a problem, I always write it from the point of view as a customer. Like, so it's almost like a complaint, but you always want to keep it respectful as possible, as much as you can.
And that's going to come into play when we start talking about the projects next, because what you could do in a perfect world is, as you create issues, either yourself or your quote unquote customers, you can have these automatically update your project board so you know at what point in time all the issues that you have going on, where they stand and how they need to be resolved. All right, so I'm going to refresh this page. Oh, no issues. All right, so one of the things that when we get in here, especially when you're working on a team, you're going to probably want to assign this to a specific person, okay? So I'm going to assign this to Clinton because he's been nice and vocal here. So now Clinton has the responsibility to complete this task, right? And I can label this as, let's see, a new feature request. So it'll be an enhancement.
And when he did that, I just got an email about it. So it says Leonard Box assigned number 4 to Clint Mint, which is my GitHub username.
And if you look down here, Clinton, even though he doesn't have a picture, he has just a little emoji picture there. That's him down there. So he's actually a participant now, a contributor to this project.
And then I just added a comment, like, what do you exactly want on the contact page?
Yeah, there you go. I see it.
So do you actually want me to add one then?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So let's say you did that, and can you, since it's yours, can you close it out?
Sure.
All right, so now the ticket's closed. All right. Now, if I click over onto the projects here, I don't think mine's automated. But what I can do here is I can convert this to an issue, but I should have done this before, all right? But I had already done that for this particular one here. All right, so that is the issue that Clinton just closed out over there. So it went now into the completed column here in projects. All right, and we'll get to projects here in a minute. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Should have kept another page here. So I put everything in the README file. Issues, closed, okay. You can also add a milestone to the particular issue that will again be tracked onto the project. Basically, when we set up your project on your own repository, what we're going to do is we're going to automate that for you so that as issues come in theory, everything's going to go automatically. So when you open it, when an issue is opened, it's going to go to do. As you're working on it, it'll move over to the getting done, and then it'll go to completed. All right. I think that's pretty much all we have on the issue side. Let's see. I got kind of pulled off here too from code. So we'll just jump back. So next to issues is a pull request. So I got one more from Dan here. He has a pull request. Let me go through and I'll do his, confirm his. All right. So what I can do during here too is if, for example, hey, Clinton, can you do another pull request for me?
Sure.
I should have walked it through so that I could do it with the projects.
So what do you want me to edit?
Just put anything you want to do.
Okay.
I just want one so that so we can show that
Okay.
I can put it into the project queue and assign everything to. All right. I'll come back to that. We'll move over here to actions. All right, actions. Not a whole lot of stuff going on in actions over here, except for what you need well, usually what happens is it comes up to the new workflow page. Okay. I already have a starter on there, so I have the greetings to automate every step of your process. So that's why you've been getting emails from me automatically when you've been doing your stuff. But when you go into your own repository and you click on actions, you're going to come up to the starter workflow page right here. All right. So this is kind of your ability in GitHub to create a testing environment for your program. All right. And there's a bunch of different areas where you can deploy your information to, whether it's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. You can stick it up in a Kubernetes container or straight into Docker, or you can put it into a gem or into an NPM or into an Ant. Wherever it is that you want to test, where you want to test your package to work correctly, right? This is not an end-all, be-all hosting capability that you're going to have, right? Once you set this workflow into action, so say I want to push this up to AWS and deploy it to Electric Beanstalk or something. So I'm gonna push it up there, and it's going to start a countdown. It's going to be up there for a maximum of 72 hours before it's going to disappear itself, right? So you get the opportunity to test, you don't get the opportunity to deploy. So again, it's a good, good thing for you to use for testing. It gives you kind of a free rein on some things, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to hang it where you want to hang it if you need to hang it somewhere in the long term. Okay. So you have it, whether you have the opportunity to do it in numerous things here, and then there's a couple that you can helps with when you're automating your workflow for issues and stuff like that down below. These things will stay on forever until you shut them off, but everything up here, it's you're going to have that time stamp on there. Now, these are not all of the end all be all pieces. These are only the ones that GitHub, quote unquote, recognizes as pure testing sites. So you can actually go in, you can Google and find more spots than all these. Oh man, that was not there yesterday. That Swift workflow was not in there yesterday. So as you can see, they're coming in every day. And since GitHub is open source. Someone just created this thing and posted it up here, and GitHub approved it and said, all right, this is good to go. We're going to post this. We're going to post this workflow up here. All right. So, all right, one of I think the biggest pieces in here in GitHub that is kind of overlooked is the projects board. All right. How many of you guys have used GitHub in conjunction with another user? So say you're working on something for a hackathon, or you're working on a team project in class. I'm sure everyone's had some type of team project that they've had to do. And you've probably been trading your information back and forth, and it's been getting changed, and sometimes it gets messed up and stuff like that. Well, GitHub, again, is a perfect opportunity for you guys to share that information and work on it together. Projects, and this specifically, this, was it the Kanban? Is it the Kanban? Is that how it's called? I can never remember. Is that the correct term? Kanban workflow or something of that nature. So what this does is this, yeah, Trello uses this, a couple other websites that kind of are trying to do some project management stuff for you. Those project management boards, they work kind of in conjunction here. So this I have is a automated board, right? So I can do some things. So I can add a note here. Add on social media icons. Right, so I can put this here on the board, right? But as you can see, it doesn't necessarily do much for me if it's more than myself working in this project, right? But I do have the ability to click on the ellipsis here and then come in and I can convert it to an issue. So I can convert this to an issue, right? I'm just gonna go. I can't change the title there, but now I can go back to my issues page. Here's
So
my,
it's kind of like your staging ground for your issues. It's like, hey, I got a to-do list, but I haven't figured out all the details yet. So I'll go back to it later when I want to actually write up everything that's the issue.
exactly.
Okay.
But it tracks not only what, you know, is being done by you, but it also tracks what's going on with everyone else on your team, so that you're not kind of butting heads. And now I can go back over here and I don't think James is with us today, but I assigned him anyway, so he gets some. So now it's assigned. So James has this assigned to him. So once James gets to it and he starts working on it, it'll move into in progress. And once he closes out that ticket, it'll come over to completed. So it kind of assists us in creating a workflow and keeping track of everything that needs to be done in our projects without having to kind of be using Discord or emails back and forth. It's just one spot shop for our whole, for, you know, managing our entire project. Now, again, this is, you know, this is just the basic 3-column board. I can add additional columns. So let's, you know, presets. So I like to have features, so I can actually move that over here. And so I can start adding like to have features that I don't even put in there yet, but me and Clinton are working on this project. We're kind of just brainstorming around what else would we like to do. We can kind of start putting these down, and then as we get a chance to start putting them into play, once all of our other, the stuff that we need to have done, we can start putting those in one by one. Just another means to kind of track what's going on with our particular with our project. Okay, and this, between your issues here, and I don't know why why GitHub split these, kind of push them apart from each other. So I think project should have been like number one, and then issues and pull requests right next to them. But that's just me. But if I go into pull requests, I had Clinton do that new one for me here. I can actually come in and I can actually assign this and put this up there as a, put this into projects itself too.
I'm curious, what is the I must have missed this. What's that GitHub Actions thing?
Oh, that's the bot that I created in GitHub Actions in the workflow.
Why is it saying messages that will be displayed on users' first PR? First pull request.
Yes.
Okay. Derp.
Yeah. So it's I think it goes on issues and pull requests, I think is what I have it set for. It's just the default.
Yeah, and I wanted to note too, a lot of times you'll make your first commit or your first pull request, and then something happens and it'll reject it. Like, for instance, at CodePath, we have this thing called a markdown checker. And what that does is it makes sure you're following all the rules for the markdown language. Markdown language is a way to format pages to make them look pretty with like bullets and numbers and stuff like that. And if you don't have certain spacing right, it'll reject the whole thing. So like, say that happened, well, how do I go back? If I'm just doing this all on here, I can just go up to where it says files changed, the files changed tab. See up there? Yeah, so you can just go in there, click on that.
Yeah, you can go in, like, so.
I would click on files changed and then just click on the file and then make a new commit, and it should automatically figure out which pull request it is.
Potentially, yes.
That's the way I used to do it. Anyway, if I was just doing it all on GitHub and I didn't want to download it to my computer, because sometimes it's not feasible if you're like, I don't know, if you're using somebody else's computer or something, but I don't know.
I got you. Let's say that we can tie that issue to our pull request. We'll say that Clinton came in and he did a new styling for our footer. So I put that in, it's in progress on our projects. And I'm going to merge pull requests and confirm. And now it's closed and back to our projects. And you'll see that that ticket gets closed. I don't know what this doesn't seem right. Oh, that was the way. That's how we tagged it. Sorry. So, all right. So projects is just a good way, especially if you're working on a team, to kind of follow what everyone's doing, keep track of what's going on, and assign people exactly what needs to get done, so you're not stepping on everyone's toes and everyone's not running over everyone's code and doing bad stuff. All right. The other thing that we'll talk about too is branching from there too. Right. Now, when you have a project that you have ready to go, that you have set up, and it's hosted up here, and you want everyone and their brother to come by and see and use, you can put together a wiki to explain everything in your code of what's happening in your code. All right, so just like you would, go on a Wikipedia or, a fan wiki or wherever, you can actually make that wiki here for your own project. So I have two things. I have a footer here that I can kind of style, and a sidebar here that I can style too. Nothing big, but I have my home page, which is just a default one, but I also put together This is what GitHub packages are. So this is what you can potentially put up here to kind of explain what's going on with your stuff, how it's supposed to work, how the user should be using it. It's kind of like, you know, an add me to your README file, which we'll talk about in great length in a little bit. Okay. So this is easy. You just come in wiki and you can, it'll start with the first one. You just create a wiki and then you can just, go in and you can add pages and pages and pages. And it's all in the same markdown language that Clinton was talking about. And we'll talk about that in a second too. But it's basically will style your page based on the markdown information. All right. I also have a security tab here. The security tab allows me to implement a security policy for my project. All right, it's not going to protect my project necessarily from invaders or viruses or stuff like that. But what it does is it gives me, and this is the security policy right now for this one, which is just the default. This is the latest versions that are supported. All right, and any vulnerabilities that we might have been alerted to, or we have found ourselves in our particular program, in our project, so that we can have you, the user, be able to fix that vulnerability when you're loading it up, or maybe it's not necessarily a vulnerability right now, but if you use it in a certain way, in a certain context, there might be a vulnerability that might occur. So it might be something and that we may know about, we may put it down in here. So you can, there's also you can actually send out draft advisories. So for everyone who has forked your repository, once you have something that comes up, you can actually disperse an advisory out to their GitHub accounts, and they'll have a little alert on that on this bell up here in the left-hand corner, or right-hand corner, sorry. And it'll turn red, kind of like on Facebook where you have like a new message or something. And any new stuff that happens on your homepage, that draft advisory, that security advisory will pop up. I get them every once in a while for some of the things that I've forked for some of the JavaScript projects that I've been working on. All right. Let's see. I think this is still in back here. Now there is a scanning alert here that is in beta. I tried to do some Googles on it. Not a whole lot going on that I could really find that was relevant to us, but it just seemed to find some general vulnerabilities in some languages, but it wasn't totally robust yet. So it may get better in the future, but right now it's like I said, it's just in beta. You can do some more reading up on it if it's something that you're interested in, but it's there. All right. The next tab that we have here is Insights. So now this is just our little practice project here. But if this is something that we as a company had kind of posted up here for open source, we wanted to see how many people were using our stuff, how many people had forked off of it, how many people were putting pull requests in, how many people were contributing to the project with us. All that information is going to pop up here in our Insights tab. So we start off with the pulse, and it's basically just showing us all of the basic stuff here. This comes down, shows all our contributors. So if you did a pull request today, you are now a contributor to this cool project, and which also means you're part of the community. So right now, all we have, I have not put all this stuff in here yet. All I have right now is a README file, but to assist all of our users or our potential customers, as Clinton said earlier, we can put in a description, and that goes up here in the top. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then we can also put a code of conduct, how we want everyone to be kind of talking to each other when they're contributing to our stuff, guidelines on how to contribute to our stuff, what licensing we're going to be under. So if you're not familiar, there are several different open source licenses. I think the most popular ones out of them, MIT, that kind of says, hey, you know, don't steal this guy's intellectual property without, you know, letting him know that you're stealing his intellectual property. Any issues, you can set up a template for issues to be when issues come in, and the same thing with pull requests. All right. Also shows me how much traffic is coming in, so you can see how many people came to our repository on what days, the frequencies of commits, how much code and what kind of code is coming in. We don't have any dependencies or anything here yet. I don't know if we're going to have anything. So you can kind of see our network graph. So we talked a little bit about that, those trees of Git. So this is kind of how, so we have Dan down here, and he did a patch. So he pulled back out. So he's working on something over here that he forked back off of. And these are all forks that came back into our main line. And then we had Clinton, who branched off and then did a commit and then came back in. And he did that twice. And then our master track is still here. And here's just a little, here are everyone who has forks that are out there right now. And here are all the people that have access to this repository as an owner. Those people just have ownership of this particular main organization. All right. So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to come back to code. There's a couple more things I want to talk about here. So we talked about the commits tab right here. The other thing we need to talk about a little bit is the branches. So you can see we have 2 branches, right? So right now, I have an active branch that Clinton has open. Right? He updated something on it 20 minutes ago, and he went to merge it back in, but it's still out there. You can see I don't have any of my own. There's the one active branch that Clinton still has. I don't know if we don't have any stale ones, and it's just those 2 branches that are out there right now. All right, so Clinton made it, built the branch off, and so I, as the owner, can keep track of everyone who's kind of branching off of this, you know, for my own information, but also so that, you know, I can kind of track too of what, you know, everyone's doing, so that when it comes time for them to do a pull request, you know, I don't want someone to be doing a pull request and trying to put some bad stuff into our project that's not necessarily that we don't want to have in there, whether it's malicious code or just code that we don't, you know, necessarily want to be involved with. You know, we don't really care that, you know, you want a pop-up of, you know, Google ads on this page, you know, so we're not going to put that in there. So what else we have here? Go back to code. Packages. All right, so has anyone ever cloned a repository in terminal from GitHub? I'm pretty sure if you've done any of the CodePath courses, you probably have. All right, if you haven't, we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, you've done it from the website. All right. Now, there are some ways that you can do, you can download packages, you can download GitHub packages as well, right? So NPM if you're familiar with Node.js, so Node, NPM being the Node package manager. So if you're working in anything JavaScript, so if you're working in React or Angular or Vue or basically even just in Bootstrap and jQuery or whatever, anything that's you're working in JavaScript, you can actually you can wrap your JavaScript information into a NPM, so into a NPM package, and then load it through terminal through NPM. So it'd be like kind of, has anyone ever used Yarn or Gem or what's the other one I'm thinking of? Homebrew. So all of these different package managers. So NPM is just one a package manager for Node. So you can wrap all of these. I think we have Maven, we have Ruby, we have Docker, and NuGet. I don't know what NuGet is, but you can wrap up your information and package your repository into into one of these specific packages, so that your users can just upload it via one of these package managers. So if I know everything that my project right here is some type of Angular component that's going to be used in an Angular project, in someone's Angular project anywhere in time throughout the globe, I can wrap that up in an NPM package, and then when they want to clone this information, they don't have to clone through terminal, they don't have to come to the web page, they just have to clone it through NPM. So they just NPM install, and this will give it a specific file name, and that file name will be what you type in, and it'll automatically install it for you. So much like it would if you clone through terminal, right? So you may not do it any time in your life, but that option is out there for you to be able to do that. Now, if you're on a regular account, there's so many hits that you're allowed before they want you to start paying for that privilege, and so many hits that you can do on a pro account before they ask for more money than what you're already privileged to have. So just understand that's kind of sometimes it could be a pay-as-you-go type situation. All right. Now, so we talked a little bit about the releases when we looked at security. So I haven't put any releases out yet on this particular thing because I just never thought to do it. We can create a new release here. And do release title. Just make it pretty simple there. Publish a release. All right, so there it is. All right, so this is our first stable build, and see what happened here. We have the source code. So now, when you go to download it, you'll get this particular version when you download. All right, so if I'm working on something in here, you don't have to worry about getting something that I'm working on and something that might be broken or something that might not be working correctly. So you can actually you'll actually get the source code from this version by something that's changed here. And you can tell here, it's set for this specific comment here. So this is the last one that's in there. So this was Clinton's last pull request. This is the last commit we had. So this is our last good version. So as you continue to go through, you can build multiple versions so that you can version this out. So for example, maybe we'll take Windows, for example. Maybe this particular build that I built for Windows 8. And this is only stable in Windows 8. So we're not necessarily going to update it anymore, but maybe we want to version it so that those people that are continuing to use Windows 8 because they don't want to upgrade their information, will it be exe? That depends on what kind of file you have, Jesse, whether it'll be a .exe or not. So it can be, or it can, it's really just going to depend on what you built. So if you're building something for Windows, for a app that's going to be, on your Windows, on Windows itself to pop up, then, sure, it's going to have an exe, or if you're building a game or something like that to load on Windows, it's going to be having the .exe file in order for you to load it. Or you'll have special instructions on how to hopefully load it through the shell or through PowerShell.
So when people are like, oh, you could download the software in GitHub, this is where it would be sometimes, right? Where they
Yes.
have like the release. Yeah.
Yes. So when we go back over to here, so when we go to clone or download, so what you should be getting here is version 1 when we download the zip. And so if we're working on it, or so what you'll have to do is, for example, if, like I said, if you're working, if this now works in 10, but there's a version that works in 8, you can go back to the releases and find the one that, let's just say, build 8. So you would go back here, for example, and come back here. Let's see, and we have our contributors. So all you guys are now contributors. Thank you for contributing here to our project. All right. Now you can see here on our pull down over here, we're now on version 1. And that's the tag that we put into our release note. V1. And that branch again is the master off of Clinton's last merge. So what you'll find here, okay, so I can switch over to Clinton's. So Clinton's, this is what Clinton sees on his last pull on his branch. This is the main branch. All right. You're probably not going to be able to see that unless you have it on your own repositories there. All right. There's a couple other buttons here. The new pull request, of course. So if you can do a couple things to get new files in here, right? You can create a new file right here like we did before. All right. We can push them up automatically from our IDE, or we can upload them and we can drag and drop them into this here. Okay. But I would caution you, every time that you go and you upload new files, make sure you give a title and a description of what you're uploading and why, so that you can keep track of that, and everyone else who's working in your repository can keep track of that. The better off you are at documenting everything that's going on, the better off you'll be at being a good partner in crime when you're working with everyone else. All right. Now, it also gives you the option down here to create a new branch. So if I'm uploading this information because I'm going to start working on something totally different on our project, then I don't want to break our main branch, I can start my new branch over here, so that this isn't broken. Now you can do that in your IDEs, of course, too, and everything else. All right, so let me see our downloads. You can, there's a search file too. So these are just all our files. It just basically gives you the whole list of all the files that are there, not in any specific order. I'm not really sure what the good of it is, but it's there. And then our clone and download. I do not have SSH turned on, but you can, of course, turn on SSH for when you're working in terminal. All right. So there's a couple of things I can do here. I can open it up in desktop. So if I open up in desktop, it's not going to do anything for me here because there's not much of whole information. But I can also download the zip file, and that'll download my thing. Now, for example, let me go. I'm going to go to one of my other repositories. So this is a Swift file, and it's embedded, and it knows that this is a Swift file. And so it's going to allow me to either open this up in desktop into a file, download it to a zip file, or open it up right into my IDE. Okay, so this also works in Eclipse. I don't know if it works in NetBeans because I don't use NetBeans, but you can certainly go and try out if you have some Java files up in some repositories to see if it'll actually open up into the IDE right off. All right, what else we have here? Sure, we cover everything. Actions, wikis. All right. So as you can see, I have a pretty robust README file here. All right. Now, I'm going to start harping on this on my up on my soapbox and everything else. Please, please, please create README files for your repositories, and please make them as detailed as possible so that you remember what you built and remember how to use it. But also, if someone else is coming in and Googled some crazy thing on Google and your repository popped up, they understand how to use it, how to install it onto their machine, and how to operate it so that they have an understanding of what's going on. All right, chances of that happening to you are probably kind of slim to nil, but I kind of mentioned this before. All of the internships that I applied for this year all required 3 things from me. They wanted a resume, they wanted my LinkedIn account, and they wanted my GitHub account. All right. They wanted my GitHub account so that they could come in and they could see what my repositories look like. If my repositories, they could understand what I was doing in my repositories, and I could easily explain through my README files what was happening there so that they could then use that as an additional discriminator, if you will, of how they kind of would judge me on how I would be working in their pods or in their groups on their teams. Okay. So what I have done down below on the bottom here is I have a couple of links here, and they seem to all have been bunched up. I'm going to do something real quick here. Make a change because they're all on one line, but they're not all in one line here. I'm just going to bullet these quick for everyone, so they don't come out in a big jumble. Don't follow my lead. All right, so now we have these all done off. All right, so this here, this first one is just a README template that goes off to HackMD. I don't know if you guys are familiar with HackMD. HackMD is just a website, and you guys can actually, if you open up this link, you guys can actually all join and follow what I have on here. But what it does is it just gives me the opportunity to create a .md, a markdown file, and also see it next to each other as I'm building it. To me, it just makes my life a little bit easier. But this is just a simple README file that I use for most of the mobile apps that I work on. I got this from CodePath. I'll rightly say I stole that. All right. This next link here, the awesome README file. This is some guy's actually awesome README file. And he actually has everything, every information you ever want to know ever about README files. Different articles, different tools, how to create GIFs, how to give feedback, all kinds of templates and everything else. And you can actually, if you Google how to create a good README file, there's like, I think there's like agreatreadmefile.com is like one of the first things that comes up. I mean, these are items that many people are thinking about, and many people are trying to kind of come up with the right answers. I think, you know, going through algorithms with Dr. Yang this past semester, everyone's trying to figure out these answers to these complex problems that she put in front of us. I think the README file is that kind of same complex problem that everyone seems to have when they put up a repository on GitHub, and trying to understand what's in the repository and trying to convey that to their users slash potential customers, or, you know, slash potential employers, or potential employees for that matter. All right, what else we have here? There are these kind of cool, this guy has these cool little plugin icons that are around. I think this goes to their homepage. But this, let's see if I can get over there, because shields.io will help you build all of those little things. So for example, we like to use Discord. So you can actually go in and plug in the Discord server for us, and it'll create a Discord badge for us to put on the Markdown. So if you want to put up your own channel, for example, for your repository, or build your own stuff, you know, your social media. So here's ones for Twitter. So tweets, we got subreddits. You can go off and, you know, here are all the GitHub ones here, but you can also go off and you can also find the ones for Facebook and for Instagram. They're all out there online. They're just not on this particular page. What else do we have here? Yeah, and this is if you guys have never gone to free code bootcamp before, this is a nice little article of what this guy and his project did. They had their project up for 3 years on GitHub, and then one day he was kind of bored, so he started toying with the README file, and all of a sudden it went crazy, and they got 3,000 stars, 3,000 follows in 1 week, just because they updated the README file. And they had only had like 14 for the previous 3 years. So that README file is kind of like I said, kind of gets to be a big deal. All right, so I'm going to go back here to this file here. All right. All right, so on this PowerPoint here, we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Here are Git instructions to put Git onto your particular IDE and how to use GitHub with each particular IDE. Now, these are all YouTube videos. They're all open source, and some of them may be accented, some of them may not be. So hopefully you can understand the English. They all are in English, but they should give you a good understanding of exactly how to include the Git plugins for your IDE in your workflow, as well as the GitHub plugins that are usually already embedded into those IDEs. So you don't have to keep going back and trying to put it in terminal over and over and over and over again. I think nowadays, the only reason why you should be working in terminal for this is if you're writing stuff in bash. You know, it's just everything's automated here, just makes everything easier, right? Instead of doing a git add, you do a git commit, and you do a git pull to pull down from the repository. You do a git push to push your commit up to the repository, and then you do you know, go into GitHub and you can change all your names and stuff like that. I think just from about every IDE, you can either start, and most of the videos will tell you, and it tells you in the documentation for each IDE too. I mean, of course, Atom is the best one because it's built by GitHub, but each of them, some of them require you to, for example, build the repository before you kind of import it into your project. So for example, I think a lot of the Visual Studio Code stuff, you need to actually clone your repository from GitHub instead of pushing a repository up to GitHub. Like in Xcode and Android Studio and IntelliJ, you can push it right up. But like in Visual Studio, you have to kind of pull it down. And it's just, but you can create a Git repository from Visual Studio Code. Just kind of the weird things there. But take a look. I want to delve into everyone because everyone has their own one that they like. If you don't find it, if you don't find the IDE that you like on here, just Google it, YouTube that, and GitHub, and there'll be probably at least 50 videos on there to tell you exactly how to embed your workflow into the IDE without having to go back into terminal, without having to do anything crazy, just by usually just logging into your GitHub account via the IDE. All right, README files. All right, so I'm going to jump up and down. They are like probably the most important thing on there when it comes time for people to start looking at your code. They answer all the questions that your audience has, your customers have. All the information that should be on there that needs to be understood about your code needs to be on there. They don't have to be very long. They don't have to be, you know, like novels, but they should have enough information that the person should be able to install your software, run your software, and get the results that should be seen from your software out of your software. Okay, so if there are certain little tweaks that have to be made when it's installed on Windows, vice Mac, or whatever, they should be in your README file. Right now, when you're doing school projects or you're doing a hackathon project or something of that nature, I would suggest that you do those, and you also try to explain as best you can how it solves the problem that you were given or that you had come up with. So for example, in algorithms this year, we did the cut rod problem, trying to figure out how the best way to cut a 10-foot rod and maximize our profit. So I would talk a little bit about the project and how my algorithm solved that problem and what you have to do as a user to replicate that same way that replicate the answer that I got using that algorithm. So how to set everything up, and then how to input the information and how to read the output. Okay. A lot of people will say you should, the first thing you should do in your project is make the README file. And it does happen where when you go and create that first repository, one of the first things it has is that checkbox to create the README file. Go ahead and just check it and have it there, and then it's good. And you'll know it's there. Just make sure that it is included in your commits and your pull requests, so that you're not continually having to go back to update it. Most IDEs will allow you to write in markup language and write in the IDE. And if it does not, most of them do have external plugins to be able to do that. I know Xcode needed an external, Android needed an external, and Eclipse needed an external plugin. But once you have that external plugin in there, you can read the README files, and you can actually update everything on there as well. So I got this off of a nice little article on there. So this is from a senior technology recruiter out of Dallas for InSource Group, whoever that is, but I just thought it was nice, So README files can be more valuable than the resume itself, since the developer is describing the problem they're trying to solve with their code. And he goes on to elaborate that, hey, if they're able to make me, the user, understand exactly what they're trying to do and how they went about trying to solve that with their code, that's usually 9/10 of the way through the process right there. All right, so should be answering these questions when you're doing your README files. What does the project do? How do I set it up? How is it used? Is it in good shape? Again, is this something that I kind of built a few years ago and haven't done anything with? So maybe it only works with Windows 8. Maybe it only works with, a certain Linux version or certain OS version. And then also, hey, can others help? And add that, that contributor information in there, and how everyone can kind of get together and work this as one, big open source project. You'd be surprised how many people just do nothing but, just happy to help out in open source projects that they are, they just think are kind of neat to work on. There's a whole host of people out there. It's kind of crazy. And then any license information. All right. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is just the profile page. All right. So here's a decent profile page, except for when a recruiter or someone went in and looked, and it had this nice little, hey, developer by day, pothead by night. You probably don't want to put that kind of stuff onto your GitHub. Again, it's, you want to try to keep this as professional as possible, because what you're going to have on here is, other developers who are going to be kind of, going through your code. But again, you could have guys that are just, you might have startup companies who are looking for a dev guy to help out with, this particular language that you have tons and tons of repositories in, and your name came up in his search, and all of a sudden, he's just kind of scanning, and maybe they're thinking about maybe offering your job, and you may not ever even know he wouldn't even went in here. But again, just leave all your stuff professional. So some of the stuff that's on your profile page here, you have your profile picture. It doesn't necessarily have to be yourself, but again, be professional. Professional. All right, we have our pin repositories. We'll talk about the pin repositories here in a second. All right, and what we have here is a nice description of each of the repositories. We have the language that they're in. Give them a little draw here. We have the language that they're in. We have how many followers there are and how many times it's been forked. Man, I wish I had 5.4 thousand forks in one of mine. tells me the repository name, and I can go in and click in and see what's going on. Now, obviously, this is not his specific repository, but is a repository he worked on. And as long as you're a contributor, those repositories are going to pop up into your repositories in your feed. Clear that out. All right, so we also have on here just a little blurb. Does have some information, kind of a user information. You have the ability to do email and some other links if you want. These aren't mandatory. You don't have to have your email shown or anything like that. Any organizations that you're a part of are going to populate over here. And then the other part that is kind of important to people who are looking through, especially some recruiters that might be coming through, is your contribution chart. And this is kind of a heat map of how much work you've been doing, you know, in GitHub at any given time, you know, space and time. You'll see there's those gray spots are, you know, not times that he's been doing any committing, but you can see he's relatively, you know, active throughout the year, and some, you know, January and February, and even December is more active than other months. But again, you know, kind of gives you a glimpse of how much work he's actually doing on the open source side. All right, so I'm going to, before we get to questions, I'm going to go back over to my page. All right, so this is my profile page here, right? It's not anything spectacular. You know, you can easily edit your profile by going in there and fill in your blurb, putting in a company name. I just have a location. I don't have a website or anything like that. All right. These are all the organizations that I have been partnered with. Right. And if I want to get more in depth, I can actually go in and edit my profile up here in the upper left and edit from there. But it's not necessary here. So the other thing that I want you to understand is these 6 repositories right here are repositories that I chose to pin. Okay. If you click on this link here, customize pins, all of the repositories that you have worked on are going to show up in this window. And these are the 6, and you can have up to 6. You can have 1, you can have 2, you can have, you know, up to 6, how many you want to show off. These are going to be the ones that are going to show off on your homepage, right? So when I go and I search for Clinton Minton on GitHub, it's going to show up. It's usually going to come up to his homepage, okay? So I can change those around. I can save these pins, and that's what I have. All right, now we talked a little bit. Now you may find that you might have some pin repositories up here automatically. That's going to happen because it's kind of the default way how it happens. And there's no description at all in here. And you might even have a README file and say, what's going on? Well, that's because for you to have a description, you actually need to put it into the repository. And it's going to happen right here in your repository by clicking this edit button. So this is where we have the opportunity to put in our description, just a little blurb of what our app is about. Also gives us the opportunity to put anything on here about a website that it might be tied to, or, you know, our homepage, whatever it is. It's not, you know, it doesn't have to be very extensive, just a, you know, a nice little blurb so everyone understands what's going on here. I can also throw in some topics. So for example, here are some things I can put in, you know, I'll add Firebase on there because it's Firebase. I'm going to add Swift UI on there. So I have those 3 topics. So I go back to my profile page. Oh, my topics don't show up, but my thing did. So I guess it doesn't matter here, but you can see here, this particular app, we do have 3 forks off of it. So any forks that are off on there will be on there. So if you come in and you start one of my repositories because you want to follow one of my repositories, it will say that it's been starred. So it just kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of show a professional looking portfolio with without having to really do a whole lot of work behind it, except for just doing your regular work. And that's, I think that's like the big thing there for that. Does anyone have any questions of anything that we've gone over so far? You want to share or do? I'm gonna go back to the video here. You can see me back in the cool, cool northern lights, or if I'm too, maybe it's too late at night, I go somewhere else too.
You're up in Alaska or what?
Yeah,
It's the virtual background.
Alamo doesn't give me a whole lot, so.
Oh, okay. I was going to say one more thing. I'm going to share my screen real fast. Oh, wait, I can't. But on the contribution settings part. Oh, okay. I was going to say, because if you're working in an organization, most of the time the repository is going to be private. But you can still kind of show your activity, but it won't describe it. At least that way they can see that you're working on stuff actively.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me on that.
Yeah, so like right here, you can choose private and activity overview. For instance, like most of my work's done in CodePath, and it's a private repo. But I can at least show my contributions, because otherwise I'd probably have like nothing. But yeah, make sure you have private checked as well. Cool. That's all I was going to say. Thank you, Leonard, for doing this. I actually got to go to another meeting right now.
And that's a good point. So, for example, if you have
Hi, everybody.
a lot of projects that you're working on, you know, even class projects, not necessarily like programming 1 or programming 2 type projects, but if you're doing like, you know, end of year type project, you know, capstone type project, or, you know, again, some for a hackathon or something that you're doing for, say, you know, you're helping out the, trying to think of the name of the coding people that came in that were trying to do the workshops for the high school and middle school kids on the south side. You know, you're doing a project for them, so you can, you know, post that up there and you can keep that public, right? But if, you know, you're just doing regular little things that, you know, you're just keeping track of, you know, all your homework on here, you want to just keep that in private repositories. Not necessarily because someone's going to come in and steal it, they probably will, but, you know, because, you know, everyone's going to try to get a little, you know, bump in and try and do, you know, get a, you know, a little cheat. I don't want to say cheat. Cheat's not a good word, but a little head start on their projects for their homeworks and stuff. But, you know, you can keep all your stuff private. You can keep track of everything, but when it comes up time for, you know, someone to look into your repository, they're not going to see that information. They're not going to see those repositories. So they can still see, hey, you know, I'm contributing. I got everything that's that I'm doing is, you know, being shown up here. Everything's good. So then I don't have to worry about, you know, being like, well, why did he put that up there? Why is he tracking that? You know, and that's kind of a silly thing for them to have in a repository. But, you know, the big stuff that I want people to be able to see, that I want to be kind of known for, or, you know, for the recruiters or the hiring managers to come in and look at, then I'll have those, you know, public for those people. And that's an easy thing. You just go into settings. Let me go back to share so you guys understand that. I'm going to go into my repositories here. All right, so let's we'll just do project 7. You can already see it's a project 8. It's already private. All right, so if I click on right up over here, let me get my annotation. How can they come in when I don't want them to come and I want them to come out there? So I'm going to click on settings right here. There's a lot of stuff in here. All right. So under manage access, right, I can add people on here. So if I want to keep this private, and I want, let's just say I want to add, I need someone's GitHub name. Need someone's GitHub name in chat. Okay. I got Dan's. He's the last one. All right. So, oh. Oh, you do it the right way. All right. So there's Dan. So I'll add Dan to my project. So now Dan can actually come in, and once he approves himself, he can come in and he can take a look at how I answered this question versus how we answer that question, right? Now on the full options pane here, as you scroll down to the bottom, this is where everything, the danger zone, and for obvious reasons, Kenny Loggins and all of you Top Gun fans, right? I can make my repository public right here, or I can make it private. So let's say, for example, I am the owner of this repository, and myself, Jesse, and Dan have all been working on it together. And I am getting a new job, and I'm no longer going to be working here. So, but the repository actually is under my ownership. I can actually transfer ownership to one of those two guys so that they don't lose everything that I have on there that might be destroyed when I go and clean out all my stuff from a new job. Okay. If this is a repository I'm not going to use for a while, or something that, maybe I did my freshman year and I'm a senior now and I probably don't need it anymore, I can just archive it. It's still there. It'll just go back into the nether regions. And when I need to, it'll come in. It just says, hey, write this to confirm. I already got graded for this, so I don't care. I understand the consequences of archiving this. So now it's archived, and I don't have all these other things anymore because it's all gone. And I can also delete this repository by doing that same code word. And then, once I delete it, it's never coming back. So try not to delete it unless you really have to, or you really, really want to. All right. Anything else that I might have missed that you think or any other questions you have? Selena, you have anything?
So I was just wondering, there's basically other projects that you could just jump on and get into as well, basically?
Yes. You can jump on anyone's project in Git, which is a good and a bad thing, as long as it's a public repository. Okay. And what we did with that fork, so what you can do is you can fork that repository, and what that does is that creates your own version of it. And you can go
within my page.
Yes, and you can build off of it. You can modify it all you want. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, if you want to contribute to that, you should follow the contributing rules for that particular project and follow them, and then do what needs to be done for the pull requests, so that the stuff that you did merges back into the overall project. Okay. Now, when we fork a repository, that's different than cloning a repository, because when we're cloning a repository, we're usually going to clone that repository to use it as it was intended, like the software is intended to be used. So, for example, if I was cloning a specific component of a React application for a web page that I was going to build. Okay, so this particular app is already set up. It uses the API that I want to use. It does everything that I want it to do. I just need, instead of me recreating the wheel and redoing it all, I'm just going to clone that repository and then add it to my project, and it'll be part of my project without modifying their project, because I'm not modifying it.
And within GitHub, there's also just practice projects to go through, like just like how you have for us right here with the our workshop, or
No,
not necessarily.
no, but we can do that. We can set those up if those are some things that you'd like to do and continue.
Little projects to learn, yeah.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff on there because GitHub's pretty big, and I wasn't trying to get into a little, this is how GitHub, you use it and everything. I just wanted more overview, worldwide, big shotgun blast, so that you understood that there's a lot of stuff that it can do and a lot of stuff that it can help you with.
Yes,
So, for example, and you can, Clinton's already gone, but a lot of the stuff that Clinton does over on the cybersecurity side for CodePath, they just do a lot of markdown sheets. So they're not, they're not necessarily doing a lot of, they're not doing applications, or they're not doing, anything that's, kind of built to be, utilized as, something to solve a problem. What he's doing is he's using it, and he's creating workshops and instructions and user manuals and stuff like that. So, even if you're, on the cyber side, you have, a new bug or something, for example, and you're doing pen testing or something of that nature, you can be doing all your notes in, in one of these markdown files on GitHub. You can be tracking your project. Say you're on a 4-man team, for example. I'll be tracking what parts you're trying to penetrate at certain times, certain methods in the project boards, opening up issues, following along, no one's, stepping on each other's feet. And you're also, writing up markdown files, putting them into the repository. So you're taking all your notes are all there. Everyone has access to everything all at the same time. It's kind of like using Google, Google Documents, but not, because you have a little bit more leeway, because let's say you went and did something that, you changed something drastically today, but it was totally wrong. And you didn't realize it until the end of the day. So you might have saved that document like 4 times during the day in Google, but now it's all there. You can't get rid of it, or you can't recreate what you had. So now, but here you can just go into that commit at the beginning of the day, start again, and you might have
remove what I did.
you might have wasted time for the day, but you didn't ruin your entire project.
Exactly.
So, I mean, so application, not only on the, just the build side, but for, a lot of, just, easy project management stuff you could be using on this side too. It takes, you can upload PowerPoints and Word documents, and I think you can even do project documents in here too. I don't remember what the project documents are for Microsoft project, but I know that when I was the office that I worked in Accenture, they were dumping a lot of their stuff into GitHub repositories, just for for institutional information. and if you're not familiar with the Markdown language, in the README file itself, I'll grab the, this is the, that's the GitHub Markdown instructions. But I like to use, and this is just, I think it's IO. Yeah. I'm going to, all right, so this is a HackMD. If you guys want to jump in on this link here, it might ask you to do a sign in there just to get into the file. But HackMD is basically, it's a online Markdown editor. And it's a what you see is what you get editor. So again, I'll go back to my share here. So if any guys want to type some stuff in there, I see there's Jesse typing away. So one good thing about this is we can share the same document all together at the same time. And everyone, we can track all our the changes at the same time too. So I can go new file. And you can see it has a little yellow there, or the little blue, and you hover over the blue and it says that's my name there. So if Selena goes in and types something in, then her number's there. So there's Jesse. Jesse's there. Type it in here. And so.
Oops, sorry.
That's fine. You get to type over all over your stuff. But it's just one other thing that you can share too. It's a nice little thing
Cool.
too.
Yeah, that's neat.
So it's a nice little file too. So if you guys are just like brainstorming or something, or doing that kind of stuff, trying to figure out what you want to do on a particular project, or ideas that you have coming up or stuff like that, just a nice little sharing mechanism where everyone can kind of go in at the same time. And yeah, you might step over each other, but at the same time, it's kind of a neat little thing to do. All right. Thanks, William. Anyone else, any questions or anything? Again, thanks for coming. It's our first one. Hopefully you guys got some stuff out of it, taught you some stuff. Next week, we're going to talk about GitHub Pages. So GitHub Pages is going to allow us to put a web page onto the World Wide Web ourselves, our own page to go out into the public, and we're going to create a little resume page so that you guys can, start learning a little HTML, a little CSS, putting it all together, and then, also have a product at the end. I think I have a couple of different ones I'm gonna try to chew off of, but I'll put that all up there. Also, if you can, I got one other thing. If I have. There is a feedback on the JagSync. If you guys can go through feedback, that'd be cool. See what you liked, what you didn't like. Hopefully everyone got some out of it. So.
Was everybody able to click the link for
attendance?
If not, I have emails to do it manually. But if it didn't work, just to let you know.
Was this a good time for everyone too?
I think it's a good time, but how's everybody else?
What was the question?
Was this a good time?
It was a good time for me.
All right. just try to keep this kind of good so that, you know, try to maintain it.
Repetitive.
Yeah. And
I
everyone,
like the
anyone who's at
accent
work
you
during
have
the
there.
day can be there, and then anyone who's not can come in. This is going to get posted to YouTube, so I'm going to stop recording now.